Thank you, General, and thank you, first of all, for your dedication to Georgia. Let me introduce you in English now. Today we are greeting our honorable guest, the great friend of Georgia, General Ben Hodges, the former commanded general the U.S. Army in Europe. I am closely watch your interviews, and I have some additional questions about Ukraine and Georgia. First of all, let's start with Ukraine. In your interviews, you mentioned that there are three possible phases of the restoration of Ukraine's territorial integrity. The first one will last about six months, and in the late August, the Ukrainian forces might fight Russians back on the 23rd February lineup. What makes you suggest that?
Well, thank you for the opportunity to answer that question. I believe that Ukraine is getting better logistically as well as in their fighting capabilities, while Russia has increasing problems, manpower, logistics, and so over time, the advantage is going to shift to Ukrainian forces. Think about it. Here we are today, day 03 of this conflict, 103 days, and even though Russia had all the advantages, they still only control 20% of Ukraine. And most of the help that the West is providing, the big guns, is only just now beginning to arrive. So that's why I think the capability for Ukrainian forces is going to increase over the next few weeks, while Russians continue to have problems. That's why I am optimistic. Now that means, though, the caveat is that we have all got to stick together. We have to continue to support. We can't begin to split apart, because that's what the Kremlin hopes, is that we will lose interest.
And what kind of assistance does Ukraine need to launch a large-scale counterattack? And is the military aid already provided by the West enough to fulfill this mission?
So what has been provided is not yet enough. That's what I mean. It has to keep coming, both the capabilities for long-range artillery, long-range rockets that can destroy the Russian artillery and rockets. That's what's needed. And what we have provided is just now beginning to arrive. So we're going to need more, obviously, for the Ukrainians to shift to the offense. Now, another area where they need help, though, is we have to fix the distribution network, the logistical network inside Ukraine. How all of this aid, how does it get from Poland or Slovakia or Romania, how does it get all the way across to the troops that need the capability? That's a challenge, and this is where I think, frankly, Germany, the Netherlands could provide expertise, maybe even commercial vendors, not uniform, but commercial contractors that do large-scale logistics.
Mm-hmm. You have just mentioned, and you hoped before, that the U.S. will provide Ukraine with long-range anti-ship capabilities, which allow Ukraine to destroy harbor in Sevastopol, so that the Russian Navy cannot stay there. But recently, President Biden refused to give to Ukraine long-range missiles. So how this decision will affect on the fate of the war in Ukraine?
I think, well, to be honest, this is one part of U.S. policy that I have not agreed with. We stopped short of providing capability that they need, and I understand the concern about providing capability that might reach deep into Russia. But first of all, I don't see what's wrong with that. Of course, the Ukrainians should be able to hit airfields and logistics used from Russia to attack and kill innocent Ukrainian people. So, of course, they should be able to do that. But I predict next couple of weeks we're going to see this policy change. I mean, it's like every time we say we're not going to do something, 2 weeks later we go ahead and do it, because we realize that the concern about how Russia might react is exaggerated, and so then we go ahead and do it. I mean, 3 months ago we were debating whether or not just to provide Stinger, if you can believe that. So we're way past that, and the Russians have done nothing special in response to any of these things. So I hope in the next couple of weeks we will make the decision to provide the longer range rocket, or maybe somebody else will.
Not only Zelensky and Ukraine, but also President Biden need to win this war before the start of the presidential race in America. So what will be the best outcome for President Biden, which will be welcomed by the American people and which help him to be re-elected?
Well, of course, the elections we have in November this year will be what we call the midterms, which will affect all of the representatives and 1/3 of the senators, and then 2 years later will be the presidential election. Honestly, I think what President Biden cares about is supporting Ukraine. He made this a priority early in his administration. His first phone call with President Putin, he said, Ukrainian sovereignty is a priority for the United States. I mean, that was early in his administration. That was very important. And I believe that President Biden also recognizes that the Chinese are watching this, the North Koreans are watching this, the Iranians are watching this, and that if we are not successful against Russia, then those adversaries will not be very impressed. Strategic, why this is important to help Ukraine win. I don't think that many Americans see Ukraine as a divisive issue. The Congress is very bipartisan in its support for NATO and in its support for Ukraine. So I think that President Biden gets good grades from most people for his support of Ukraine.
Analyzing Russian mistakes, you emphasized that one of the biggest Russian failures is that they could not integrate sea, land, and air forces. So have you noticed something like of multi-domain operation in Ukrainian war tactics? I mean, when five different domains, maritime, land, sea, cyberspace, and space, act together to fulfill the military mission. And especially during a Ukrainian attack on the Russian flagship Moscow.
This war has revealed several vulnerabilities of the Russian military. It's revealed the corruption that's there. I mean, so much money has been spent to modernize Russian forces, but yet this ship, Moscow, had very old, ineffective defense systems. I mean, that's incredible that the flagship would be so poorly prepared. And frankly, it looks that the sailors were not committed to that ship the way you would expect. So there's a corruption there. When you send soldiers on an invasion that has already expired, that's beyond the shelf life, that's 100% corruption, as well as clearly leaders don't care about their soldiers. And then failure to be prepared. Their communications network doesn't work. That's why using Ukrainian cell phones, which is why so many of them are getting killed. So these are problems that have been identified. They will fix some of these problems, but it's going to take a long time to repair all of their problems.
But again, what about multi-domain operation war tactics? Have you noticed something like this in Ukrainian war tactics?
Well, to be able to do multi-domain joint operations where you have air, land, sea, special forces, cyber, all of these, you have to practice this. You have to train in very rigorous, and the Russians don't do that. I mean, they have expensive equipment, they have smart people, but they do not, they have not embraced the requirement to train to a level where, to the point of failure. So their exercises have not helped them develop those capabilities.
Thanks. And while the dissatisfactions with the inflation and food shortages in the Western societies are growing, and when internal contradictions are more visible than before inside the West, do you still believe that Putin will not last another 5 years?
Yes. Yeah. I think that the problems, yes, of course we have challenges, but despite the challenges inherent in keeping multiple democratic nations together, I mean, that's hard, but yet we're still doing that. And nobody in the EU, for example, is accepting the Kremlin false narrative that it's the reason for high food prices and gas prices is because of our sanctions. Nobody believes that. And so if we, so sticking together, obviously, is an important part of this. But the problems inside Russia, the corruption I've talked about, the leadership within the concept of Putinism, which means a very small group of people that are held together by patronage and corruption and patronism, is not a long-term sustainable model. And I think as more and more Russians are begin to realize how the reason that their life is not as good as it could be, as it is in other more westernized countries, and that more than 20,000 young men have been killed in 3 months in this war, and that billions of ruble have been wasted, all because of one person. I think that they're going to get tired of this. I think that the Russian economy is not in a good place, as more and more people, more and more countries move away from Russian gas and oil as the source. The Russian arms industry, fewer people are going to be interested in buying Russian weapons when they see how poorly they have performed in this war. And then the Russian population is small and getting smaller. It's unhealthy. And so for a country that large with such a small population, I don't think it's sustainable. And so all of these factors together, and of course the performance of the Russian military is also is undermining the longevity of the government. So I think this is going to happen organically. I'm not talking about regime change. This is going to happen. I think we're on the front edge of the next 5 years, seeing the collapse of the Russian Federation government.
I see. Let's move on to the Georgian affairs. What do you advise to the Georgian government? What does Georgia need to to increase its military capabilities? And also, what kind of military assistance should Georgia seek from our Western allies?
Well, first of all, the government of Georgia has to decide where is Georgia's future. What needs to be done to attract and keep as many of the very bright young men and women of Georgia to want to stay in Georgia? Otherwise, they will leave. They will go. They will vote with their feet, and they will go somewhere in Europe or the U.S. or elsewhere where they think they have a better chance at quality of life, health care, salary, education, and so on. And so the government of Georgia has to decide where is that future. And the future of Georgia also depends on the rest of the world seeing Georgia as the portal between Europe and Eurasia. So that means becoming a logistics hub, a transport hub for Europe and Eurasia. So that's seaports, rail, infrastructure, the things that are necessary so that people invest there. And so if you do that, that's just as important for security as having armed forces. Now, I personally would like to see some kind of rotational presence of American, British, other troops, other NATO soldiers there, constantly training. I'm not talking about a big base or anything like that, but a constant presence of Air Force, Army, Navy from different countries that are there to help to do training. I mean, there's good opportunities to train in Georgia in the mountains as well as in other training areas. But Georgia can make it more attractive if it wants to have more Western participation. I would love to see us put some logistical things there on the ground for an emergency. I love being around soldiers of Georgia. They're very good, they're fit, they're dependable, courageous, and so I think we would always want to continue this relationship as well. But at the end of the day, Georgian people and the Georgian government have to decide where is your best future.
Yeah, and as we start speaking about future, how do you assess the speeches and actions of the Georgian government after Russia's war in Ukraine broke out?
Unimpressed. I mean, I see some things. I know there are a lot of Georgians who have volunteered to go to Ukraine, for example, but those are individual volunteers. And I think that the Georgian people mostly support Ukraine. But I haven't seen the same sort of condemnation of Russia that I see from Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland. So that's what I mean. It's kind of mixed. And look, I'm not naive. I understand Georgia already has Russian troops there, are still occupying. So if anybody should be loud, it should be Georgia, saying, look, this is what happens if you do a ceasefire or some kind of agreement with Russia. This is what happens. 14 years later, Russian troops are still occupying Georgia in violation of the agreement. So Georgia should be the loudest, telling the whole world, do not sign a ceasefire with these guys because they will not honor it. That's what I need to hear. That's what we need to hear from Tbilisi.
And final question, what will be Georgia's place in Europe's new security architecture?
I think actually this is the choice of Georgia. I believe that the United States and NATO are going to develop a strategy for the Black Sea region that recognizes the strategic importance of the region from an economic standpoint and a diplomatic standpoint, as well as a military standpoint. And that means repairing the relationship with Turkey, but also Georgia sits in such an important place in the Caucasus there. And so I think Georgia has an opportunity to make it clear to Washington and to Brussels that, hey, we can offer this. We can offer the incredible geographic advantage of Georgia and Azerbaijan as this portal that connects Europe to Eurasia and is on the border of Russia. So I think Georgia needs to decide how it can contribute.
Thank you very much for your time again, for your interview, and my appreciation for your dedication to Georgia. We recognize you as a great friend of Georgia, as I mentioned before, and I hope that we will have more opportunities to have an interview with you. Thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you. I will be there in September for the Tbilisi Security Conference, so hopefully I can see you then.
Thank you. By all means, I will do my best. Good luck. Bye.
Thank you.